Hi, mini scientists. Welcome back to this week's lesson. We are looking at the role of food in an ecosystem, lesson 1.6 and 1.7. You are going to start on your do now. Complete the fill in the blank by using the words in the word bank. Remember, words can only be used once. 1. Animals grow by changing food molecules in body molecules. 2. These molecules can help their bodies grow and stay strong. 3. Animals use some food molecules to release energy. 4. Energy is also used to move and thrive. We are now going to be doing our vocabulary review. You are able to use the image below to help you answer the question. A producer is, they are organisms who make or produce their own food. 2. Define organism. They are living things like an animal or plants. 3. Which organism is the producer? Grass. Okay, you can also use this image to help you answer this question. Which organism is the producer? D. Tree. You may also use this image to help you answer these 3 questions provided. What are the animals called in a food chain? C. Consumer. 2. Humans are considered consumers. 3. The role of consumers in a food chain or food web is D. Eat other species and keep them from overpopulating. So we're still looking at our chapter 1 question and trying to figure out why aren't the jaguars and sloths growing and thriving? Yum, 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 Cookie Monster. So I want you to think, what does Cookie Monster get from eating all of these cookies? Okay, remember our question of the week is, how do animals grow? Animals grow by changing food molecules into body molecules that can build their bodies. We will now model the flow of matter. Together, we will mark up the diagram below to show where food matter comes from in an ecosystem. We will focus on how food matter becomes body matter and how populations stay healthy. So remember, food matter travels in an ecosystem. Let's look at the savanna ecosystem. In the ecosystem, we have 3 organisms: grass, zebra, and cheetah. On the side, it shows me the amount of food matter. I am going to start with a normal, healthy grass. Now remember, our grass is our producer. This means I would transfer a normal amount of matter to my next organism, which is my zebra. A zebra is a consumer. This means my zebra population will also be healthy or normal, which means my cheetah population here, which is also consumers, will receive a normal amount of food matter from the zebras, which and then will have a very normal or healthy relationship within this ecosystem. Now we're going to try this 2 more times. Now let's see what will happen if my grass, my population, is unhealthy. This can happen in a savanna ecosystem if there is not enough rain for our grass. If the grass is unhealthy, it passes a least amount of food matter to our next organisms, our zebras. I wonder, how would this affect our zebra population? It will also be unhealthy. Our zebra population will be unhealthy. Remember, if you have an unhealthy producer, which is my grass, that will affect my consumer, my zebra. Now, how would this affect the amount of food matter the cheetahs receive? They will receive less amount of food matter. In return, the cheetah population will also be unhealthy. Let's try it one more time. What do you think will happen if I have a very healthy or more grass in our ecosystem? So a little more than normal. If I have more grass in our ecosystem, then the zebras will receive more food matter. So our zebras will become very healthy because there are the molecules for them to use for energy to build and to build in their bodies. So they will also be very healthy. The amount of food matter that the cheetahs will receive from zebras will be more and will cause a very healthy population for cheetahs. I want you to think, if we have a very healthy ecosystem that includes more consumers, what can happen to that ecosystem? Okay? It can become overpopulated. An ecosystem is a community of organisms together with its environment. The parts of an ecosystem include all the living as well as the non-living things in the environment. Each part in the system plays a role. Throughout this unit, you'll discover the different roles of the various parts of ecosystems, and you'll discover what can happen if something happens to one of our parts. We are going to be doing some partner reading. We are going to finish up Matter Makes It All Up. As you read, think about where all the food molecules for the ecosystem come from. We have learned that animals eat to get the food molecules they need. This leads us to our next investigating question. Woohoo! Where do food molecules come from? Ecologists think a lot about eating. Eating is one of the most important ways that matter moves through an ecosystem. All the animals in the ecosystem need to eat. Most of these animals are also eaten by some other animal. In order to understand an ecosystem, it is important to figure out what eats what. Figuring out what eats what can be difficult. An ecosystem may have countless organisms of many different kinds. All those different kinds of organisms interact in complicated ways. To find out what each kind of animal eats, scientists collect data. They observe animals in nature and record what the animals eat. If scientists find a dead animal, they may observe the inside of its stomach. That way they can gather data about what the animal ate before it died. Scientists also looked at data that other scientists have collected in the past. If we see our image below, this bird is eating a fish it caught in the swamp. Here we have our ecologists gathering data about tiny animals that live in a swamp. Ecologists need lots of data to figure out what eats what. Ecologists make diagrams to show what eats what in an ecosystem. Let's look at the example of the alligator again. Alligators often eat birds called the gray blue herons. Gray blue herons often eat carp, a kind of fish. Carp often eat bladderwort, a kind of plant that grows in swamps. A diagram showing how these organisms interact is called a food chain. If you look to the side on page 15, you have an example of that food chain. The arrows in the food chain show the direction that matter moves through an ecosystem. When a carp eats a bladderwort plant, some of the matter from that plant gets turned into part of the body of the carp. When a heron eats the carp, some of the matter from that carp gets turned into part of the body of the heron. When an alligator eats the heron, some of the matter from that heron gets turned into part of the body of the alligator. The same matter that made up the bladderwort plant eventually ends up as part of the alligator's body. Where did the matter that makes up the bladderwort plant come from? Plants do not eat, but they do take in matter from the air and water. They use this matter to make their own food. Plants can use the food to build their bodies. Only plants and plant-like organisms such as algae can take in matter from non-living things and use it to make food. That is why you'll find plants or algae at the beginning of almost every food chain. A food chain helps trace the way matter moves through an ecosystem, but it doesn't give the whole picture. A food chain just shows one food for each animal, but most animals eat more than one kind of food. To understand an ecosystem, better, ecologists combine many food chains together to make a food web. A food web shows that some animals eat more than one kind of food. It shows that some organisms are often eaten by more than one kind of animal. Food web shows how lots of different food chains are connected. On the next page is a food web of the alligator's ecosystem. It shows that alligators don't just eat herons, they also eat raccoons, marsh rabbits, frogs, and carp. In fact, most of these organisms in the food web are eaten by many other organisms. This food web still doesn't show all the different relationships in the ecosystem. There are thousands of kinds of organisms in the ecosystem, and the food web only shows a few of them. The food web also doesn't show any of the non-living parts of the ecosystem, like air, water, and rocks. Still, matter moves back and forth between living and non-living things all the time. For example, whenever an animal breathes in and out, matter moves through an ecosystem in complicated ways that are challenging to trace, but it's still all the same matter. When ecologists look at an ecosystem, they see matter moving and changing, going from one part of the ecosystem to another. Matter from a bladderwort plant will someday become part of the body of an alligator. Matter from the body of an alligator will someday become part of the air and soil in an ecosystem. The same matter keeps getting recycled over and over. It becomes part of many different living and non-living things. Alligators, rocks, birds, plants, and air. Matter makes up everything in an ecosystem. We are now going to do this diagram together. By looking at this image, is this a food web or a food chain? We are looking at Cape Cod salt marsh food web. Use the food web above to fill in the blanks below. Start with the cordgrass and follow the arrows to the human. What eats what in this ecosystem? So remember, we are going to start with the producer, which is our cordgrass. So here we have our cordgrass. From there, I know that the purple marsh crab receives its matter from the cordgrass. So I'm going to hit purple marsh crab. Now remember, this is a food web. So since we're looking at a food web, which shows that some animals eat more than one kind of food, we have different arrows. I am going to go towards the blue crab. The blue crab is then eaten by a dusky smooth hound, which then gets eaten by a human. What I want you to do next, I want you to provide another way in which codgrass molecules end up in humans. So you're going to provide me with another route that codgrass can also end up in humans. Number 2, which of the following correctly shows a food chain that exists in this ecosystem? So I'm going to go through each one. So I have A, algae, mummichog, raccoon, snowy egret. By just looking at this, I could say, that could be a possibility. B, I have algae and codgrass. Well, both of these are producers, so no, that won't be a correct way for a food chain. C, raccoon, snowy egret, mummichog, algae. Well, I remember that in the book it did mention how producers usually start off your food chain, and a raccoon isn't a producer, it is a consumer. D, algae, mummichog, snowy egret, raccoon. Now, once again, by just looking at it, that could be a possibility. So I'm going to look back at my 2 possibilities. Now I have algae, mummichog, raccoon, and snowy egret, and D shows it where I have snowy egret then raccoon. Now, snowy egret does not eat a raccoon. From this image, it's telling me that a raccoon eats a snowy egret. So, A shows an incorrect answer because raccoon should not be there. Your correct answer is D. Great job. Remember to go back to your Google Slides and complete your learning.